This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
We grew up in a world of interruptive ads where billions and billions of dollars were being spent to interrupt entertainment and get us to pay attention to a brand message. And my thesis has been that the brands can actually create the entertainment. Whether that's a live event, piece of music, short film, feature film, television show.
First of all, it is great to see you. Are you in Tennessee? Are you in Nashville?
I'm back in Tennessee after a whole lot of time in New York the last couple of weeks. But yes, I am here and really happy about it.
I mean, if you were going to rank your top 3 cities, what do you rank them now? U.S. cities.
That wasn't in the questions. I love Los Angeles. And when I started telling people I was leaving Los Angeles after almost 20 years, multiple people said a version of this sentence: if you're leaving LA, everyone's leaving LA because everyone in LA believes you are the most LA person in LA. So I love Los Angeles. I really love Nashville because it has many of the elements of Los Angeles professionally, meaning a great creative community and all the infrastructure for creative people to have a business life through creativity. To digress before we've begun, but this is a courageous podcast. I believe the highest functioning societies in America right now are blue cities and red states, of which Nashville is one, simply because we are forced to coexist with people who don't necessarily share our worldview. And civil discourse, I would suggest, is alive and well in a lot of these communities, as is a certain level of gentility, if you will, meaning maybe they'll listen to this, but I know for a fact that my neighbor on one side here in Nashville, Tennessee, does not vote like I vote. I'm pretty certain that the people on the other side of me maybe vote similarly, but even further in a direction. I'm certain of those things, and I've never talked deep politics with either of them. I've spoken about issues. So anyway, so for that reason, I love blue cities and red states, and I do love Nashville. I've been in New York a bunch recently. I don't know where this whole meme of New York went in the wrong direction during the pandemic, because New York feels great right now. Incredible creative energy there. And I mean that from the food to businesses to the actual arts. So at great risk of sounding like Jae Goodman, who works in the entertainment and advertising business, I love Los Angeles, New York, and Nashville.
I love that you picked exactly a left, a right, and a center. And I wasn't talking political. I actually meant literal. You had them all covered. Jay, so, you know, our business, the creative business is not a 9-to-5 thing. It's not a, like, if you want to wear khakis for the rest of your life, this is probably not your first choice of businesses, because it's just chaotic and there's just a lot of changes that come with it. And it's almost all subjective. I know we could have a whole nother podcast about, is that going away? But that's not what this podcast is all about. So I've been able to kind of meet you, see you, understand your story for like the last, I'd say, 8 years is how long we've known each other. But I do think your latest move feels the most brave, but I'm curious if you agree or disagree on that.
I agree. I both agree and disagree. Look, I agree that it was courageous in that I really had to look myself in the proverbial mirror before jumping entirely out on my own. I took time off. I did some pretty deep personal work, which is not something. I hadn't done a lot of personal development work in the past, but I did. I went to the Hoffman Institute. I really moved through some things that I felt like I needed to move through before I truly went out of my own professionally. I spent a lot of time listening to trusted advisors, to my wife, number one on the list, the person who knows me best and pushed me the hardest to do this. And then I suppose there was even some courage in defining the business model. I think there, even landing on the right business model probably had a bit of courage in it. And then quite a bit of courage in trying to convince a partner in John Kaplan and colleagues to join me. It's a lot to put yourself out there. But where I don't necessarily, maybe I don't find a whole lot of courage was that there's no job I want more than this one. No better place for me to advance my career-long thesis. No amount of money that an entertainment or an advertising company or an individual brand could pay me to service their needs rather than help all three of those elements work together in innovative and effective ways. So I guess in some ways it was a fait accompli that I had to do this right now. And there was no courage associated with understanding that. And I think it took a lot for me to then get to a place personally, existentially, where I could step into that fait accompli fully and say, yes, this is the time I'm going to put it all on the line.
I do that thing you shouldn't do as a creative sometimes, right? Because an observationalist, you're supposed to sort of be unemotional and step out and then look at a situation and be like, where's the emotion in that situation? But as I think about my journey in whatever business we want to call this, it started out like I didn't get a lot of say. It was like just survive New York City, right? I wanted to be a creative. For me, I didn't get my first choice. I was on the other side of the brain, which at the time made me very sad. But realistically, it was like the best thing that ever happened because I got to learn business and speak fluent business before I ever moved over to that side. And the further along I went, I would eventually get to make a choice or two. And then you go and you start your own thing. It was like 20 years of fear and stubbornness, and I can't fail, and I don't want to go back to New York with the tail between my legs. To only get to my last experience, where if I'm really vulnerable and honest with myself, I would say I didn't vet my partners as well as I should have, and they didn't vet me as well as they should have. And we all had the grit, and we all had the tenacity, and we all wanted to make it work, and we did. We got to a good spot. But I will also say, wow, if I were them looking at me, there were times I was a pretty shitty partner. Like I had hidden secret meetings with other people because I couldn't move the organization where I wanted it to. And finally had the hard conversation with myself. This is a long-winded way of saying that there was pain that I had to address in order for me to get to courageous. And like you said, I am now in bad cliche dressed for the job I want. This is the right job for me. When you think about your last decade or 5 years, I mean, are there similarities? Was there pain? Was there frustration? I'm not even sure what you can share or you can't share, but would love to at least ask the question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for framing it through your own experience. I'm similar to you in that as I look at all of it, I learn from all of it. I would say starting with, my own shortcomings first, I spent a lot of time frustrated. And I think even in my best moments and best organizations and best projects with best results, as I look back at them, I was not always my best version of myself. I think I expressed what I thought was objective a lot of time in feedback, in particular, as I got into roles of semi-leadership and then ultimately real leadership and in management, where I'll digress into an anecdote for a moment. Kind of peak CAA business was absolutely rocking. The client list was a dream client list. The awards were falling out of the closet that we put them in. The group was probably about 100 people at the time, and a great trusted friend, longtime colleague going all the way back to the 90s at Wyden, Ned McNeilage, walked into my office after a meeting that I thought was a great meeting where I was on and the room was on and things were moving forward. And he says, "Hey, so that offhanded comment you made to the most junior person in the room." I was like, "What? Which one?" I mean, it's like, he said, "That to you was a throwaway and you just ruined their day. Like what you say matters to them and the way you say it matters more." And he's like, "Look, Jay, we're friends. I know it was a throwaway to you. I know you didn't mean it, but your throwaway in that moment, small for you, big for them. That was their moment to talk to the boss in front of a room full of 90 other people." But honestly, that was a career, actually not a career, that was probably a life shifting conversation. So it's a long kind of roundabout, response to your anecdote, but I don't regret anything that happened to me that was out of my control or organization. I definitely think I could have been better along the way. And what more might I have gained from the great Wyden and Kennedy, where I spent my formative years, or Warren Miller Films making ski movies before that, or a dozen years at CAA that were, I mean, mind boggling in what they did for me career wise. All great things, lots of good people, lots of good memories. As I mature into going forward on my own, that's why I went and did that personal development work, so that if I was going to ask people to join me specifically on this new version of my career long thesis, the thing I needed to be able to look them in the eyes, and as I said it, as I'm doing to you right now, is that I will bring the best version of myself to work every day.
I love that. And I think I'm sure you already have, but it's good for any listener as well. And I feel the same way. We're all doing the best we can here, right? Like you're not, it's like you, I'm a competitive person, but I'm also a compassionate person. But there's not every place in my career in New York City where I had the time to be compassionate, or like someone was coming down on me and I allowed that to bounce off me and go on somebody else, right? And the older you get, I think the more things slow down a little bit, and you're like, oh, the whole point of the exercise is not to be perfect. It is messy, but how do I bring the best version? And then create space for other people to come along for the ride with me. And as Superconnector now becomes the thing, give me the why Superconnector now, and why Superconnector?
Sure. So maybe it's helpful to describe the business first. Let's not assume that everybody who listens to your great podcast knows what the hell I'm up to or have been even. So, my career long thesis, for those who don't know, is just that the best marketers in the world create content and experiences that attract and engage audiences rather than interrupt them, as advertising does, while simultaneously driving brand and business results. And what that simply means is we grew up in a world of interruptive ads where billions and billions of dollars were being spent to interrupt entertainment and get us to pay attention to a brand message. And my thesis has been that the brands can actually create the entertainment, whether that's a live event, piece of music, short film, feature film, television show, whatever it is. So that's the kind of career long thesis. The business itself is born out of the fact that brands, if I were to draw a triangle, brands, entertainment, and consumers have this correlated relationship. And for a really long time, like 70 or so years in particular around television, the relationship and the business ecosystem around them were pretty much the same. Entertainment companies, an entire ecosystem, meaning television networks and the studios who make the shows and the agents and managers and lawyers who all surround these things, they exist in an ecosystem that makes this entertainment that people want to watch. And then there's this whole other business ecosystem called advertising that has the brands, it has their ad agencies and their media agencies and PR agencies and lots of people with creative in their title. And they create the stuff that interrupts. And then there's consumers down here who sign up to watch the stuff that they really want to watch and then get interrupted so that stuff can be free. And if I were actually to describe that to you in a vacuum, you'd be like, wait a second, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There's two entire different industries, both spending billions of dollars. Like, what can't these things be one? Well, then something happened in the last 10 years while I was doing CAA marketing, which I ultimately spun out to become Observatory, which is that brands went essentially D2C. And I don't just mean D2C brands, I mean performance marketing. They took what they used to spend in upper funnel brand marketing and started dumping it into this very, very transactional, very momentary, very optimizable performance marketing. And you could literally see on a dashboard how your marketing was working in real time. Well, brands really aren't built in real time, they're built over time, but they tried it anyway. At the same exact time, entertainment went D2C, in particular streamers, subscription only. Hey, if you pay us directly, we won't interrupt you with advertising. Well, what happened toward the end of that decade is it broke down. You can only spend so much on performance. There are diminishing returns before digital cost of digital customer acquisition starts to skyrocket. You can't just keep spending more on that momentary transactional. I'm almost done with this, by the way. You just can't. And what also happened is brand scores started to fall because performance doesn't build brand. At the same time, streaming business model doesn't really hold up on its own as pure subscription. So Netflix, ad-free since its inception, better yet, HBO ad-free since 1972, right? Both say, subscription model's not going to hold up. We need advertising. So there's this once in 50 or 70 years opportunity to really redefine the relationship moving forward between brands, entertainment, and consumers. They're more disconnected than ever, right? So we created Superconnector Studios to pull them together so that brands, entertainment, and consumers could create mutually beneficial, innovative, and effective ways to work together. Also called it Superconnector Studios because I don't know what I might be good at, let alone the best at. Creatively, strategically, I don't think I have the highest IQ, but I do have a very strange memory for everybody I've ever met, what the context of that meeting was. Brand values hang in my head in a weird way. And I'm just very strangely, I love the idea of connecting two people or two entities at exactly the moment where they might be able to do something together that works out well for both of them. So Superconnector Studios was born out of that. There's a Malcolm Gladwell chapter from The Tipping Point where he describes a woman called Lois Weisberg, who is herself a superconnector. That always stuck in my head. So Superconnector Studios.
I like the name, and I could see, in very typical whatever world we came from with little lines calling out different, thoughts for super, for connector, and for studios. And I think if you aren't paying attention, which sometimes we aren't because we're busy creatures living busy lives, it could come off as, oh, Jay knows everybody, which is not terrible, by the way. Like, Jay knows the streamers, he knows the talent, he knows how to put all this together. But if there was a line to super, that would be the quality of the product, right? Like, don't bring us something that isn't at that level, right? Don't bore us, don't interrupt us. Connector is the actual cocktail mixture of people coming together, and then studio sounds like the outcome, right? It's the what are the stories and production that you're bringing to life? Is the business in your mind? Give me the tail of the tape. Like, how new in are you? What can you share? What type of project is sort of lighting you up right now?
Yeah. So I realized despite that really long setup on how we came to it, I didn't actually tell you what the business is doing. So sure, there are three aspects of the business: management consulting. And so speaking of not being the smartest, like, we're not McKinsey, Bain, or BCG, but McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and others have not been hanging out at the intersection of brands and entertainment for the last 25 years, and we have. So there's one thing we do better than them. And so we service all the elements you just described. So we service the entertainment ecosystem. So major distributors hire us to help evolve their relationship with brands and advertising. Literal studios. So, Sony is a studio, meaning they make 100 television shows and films every year, but they don't distribute them. They sell them to a range of distributors. As such, Sony doesn't necessarily have direct brand relationships. They have some, but not a lot, and they don't have a scaled business around it because the last thing they want to do is take money away from the people they're selling to. However, it's evolved a bit, and so the executive producer of Jeopardy, who also has a really I'm going to digress in this anecdote because it gives you really specifics of what we're working on. So Michael Davies is the new executive producer of a longstanding show, obviously in Jeopardy. He called. He says, I have the #2 show on television: Sunday football, Monday Night Football, Jeopardy. 9 to 10 million people a night, 4 nights a week. Way broader demographically than you think, and highly engaging. It's a game show. Yet his advertisers, with respect to those longstanding advertiser, brain vitamins for old people, pay-as-you-go wireless service for old people, and as somebody else put it, not him, not me, Geico ads, but not even the funny ones. And so he said, like, why do I have the #2 show on television, but I don't have the best brands in the world dying to advertise with me? Well, it's because he sells through a syndicated model and he doesn't have direct relationships and he doesn't get to make that case. So he brought us in, and ultimately Sony brought us in to help write their brand partnership strategy. So distributors are doing it, studios are doing it, and then we're doing it kind of sometimes for even individual talent agencies. So that's management consulting. We obviously do it for brands. We do it for ad agencies, as I said. We have a brand entertainment studio. That's quite simple. When I was at Observatory, we built Nike's entertainment entity. It's called Waffle Line Entertainment. Pitched it speculatively to them. I think it was 172 pages in 90 minutes. They essentially said yes in the room, although it took 6 months to figure it out from there. But then, we wrote the business strategy behind it. We brought in the investment banking team to write the actual business model behind it. So we're doing it now with AB InBev, along with some other partners. We're doing it with Gibson guitars. So that's like full on studio. Like, we want to get into the business of creating entertainment to help drive our brand and business. And then we do a lot of one-off productions in brand entertainment as well, both for ad agencies and brands directly. And then the last piece we do is talent accelerated consumer brands. So not just new to world celebrity spirits, although we do have some of those going on, everybody does. But we really work with the world's leading CPG companies, identify the brands in their portfolio that have the most potential, but are maybe undersupported. Whether you're, and I'm not listing the ones we work with, but whether you're P&G, Unilever, SC Johnson, you name it, they tend to support their winners. And so it's not even the 80-20 rule. It's more like a 90-10 rule. Kraft Heinz probably falls into this list as well. So what we do is we look at the brands they're not supporting, and we have a proprietary process. We look at brand values, we look at the current customers, we look at desired customers, and then we also look at the array of talent values, then who their core audience is, meaning who follows them on social, who their extended audience is, meaning, who goes to their sports games, who listens to their music, goes to their concert, who watches their films and television shows. Then we take those two sets of concentric circles, and here's the proprietary part. We make a Venn diagram. But then because we sit at the intersection, we because in advertising, everyone knows we're the entertainment people, and entertainment, everybody knows we're the brand people. We're able to get to the right people, whether that's a lawyer, manager, talent agent, their cousin who's their producing partner, and gauge interest, availability, and conflicts right away. So we have a range of talent accelerated consumer brands that are moving forward pretty rapidly right now.
This might be the most courageous question I ask, and we might be at that moment. So if you pop back on the show in 5 years from now, what do you hope you're known for? Like, if you could only pick one of those three, it lights me up. I love doing this. It pays the bills. It brings me joy. I've got a team that loves this. I had to move back to LA 6 months out of the year. Maybe your wife doesn't love that part that much, but maybe she does. If you could, and again, I say it's courageous because I get it as an owner, and we're wide too. But like, if I could just do this, wow, that would be amazing. What's your answer?
Question. Look, the management consulting feeds the other two, right? If you don't have a premium content strategy or you don't have, a strategy for what to do with your under-supported brands, then you're not going to get to build a brand entertainment studio or build talent accelerated consumer brands. So let's set the management consultancy aside. And I really do think it's the pinnacle of the next two, though. If a significant player in sports entertainment is Waffle Line Entertainment, and there are a dozen other brands, and I believe there will be in 5 years because we got half a dozen of them in progress right now. If they're creating entertainment and they're considered true entertainment creators alongside those who've been creating it all along, total win. I'm proud. My career was a success. Same as, we were lucky enough, we had nothing to do with this inception, but we were lucky enough to help launch, others were involved, Snoop's Wine with 19 Crimes, which is owned by a company called Treasury Wine Estates. They were at, I'm not, let's say a multiple of their projections because that worked out so well. It is crazy how well the partnership between Snoop and 19 Crimes has worked out. If there are a dozen brands on the shelves 5 years from now that were part of our proprietary process I just described to you in detail, that's a win. My career has been a success. Like, I want to go to a supermarket and say, like, that product only exists because we were the ones who helped accelerate it. That movie that just won an Oscar, like, that was actually born out of a corporate brand's strategic marketing initiative. And yet critics said that was the best movie in that category this year. Like, that's a win. And I don't think it's too ambitious to suggest that both of those things could be true 5 years from now.
I mean, we're kind of back to the top of the show with this creative business. Is that how you see yourself too? Do you see, like, did you, being at Wyden specifically, like, I mean, Wyden is Wyden, and I think they're in a category of their own. But were you taught, hey, it's advertising, or were you taught, like, my first mentor was like, and this was Ron Berger, at Messner, Berger, McNamee, Schmetterer, this concludes our show, right? At Messner, it was all about you're not in advertising, you're in creative business. And we had the Creative Business Awards, or CBIs, Creative Business Ideas. Where did you learn that for you?
So even making ski movies with Warren Miller, the way that worked then, I don't know how it works now. We spent about $1 million making the movie, got about $1 million in brand partnership. So it was a break-even proposition. And then the company made money touring the movie like a concert. And whatever we sold on tickets, that's what the company made that year. So I think I just got it. I also worked for a concert promoter named Bill Graham growing up. May he rest in peace. But my job was to wash the Pontiacs, among many jobs. I was the lowest person at both of those companies, by the way. They're both really cool companies. I had the least cool job in both of those companies. But so, like, Pontiac was a sponsor of a couple of the venues, including one called Shoreline Amphitheater in Northern California. My job was to wash the Pontiacs as part of the Pontiac promotion at Shoreline Amphitheater. So I think I got, like, the relationship between brands and entertainment grilled into me really early. But then, yeah, Wyden, absolutely. We weren't creating advertising, although they are the world's greatest ad agency, hands down. But at the time, they're still at their pinnacle. But at the time I was part of them being at their pinnacle, then ads really mattered. And if you were watching the game, whether it was at a bar or home, and a Jordan ad came on, I can only speak for myself. I know I was, but I believe culturally we were all inclined to lean in for the next Jordan ad. And in fact, flash forward, part of our pitch for Waffle Line Entertainment was actually that Nike was at risk of being the last great advertiser because they had the most rewindable logo in the world. And, like, whatever logo you see at the end, maybe Apple's tied for first. Like, if I'm fast forwarding even today and I see a swoosh or an Apple logo, I will rewind and watch the ad, but that's not true for any other brands in the world.
Well, I mean, there lies the problem, right? Or the opportunity, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. And we actually met first at the Effies. I mean, I don't know what your title. You were chairman, or I don't know what your fancy title was, but I was just a neophyte judge. Nothing
You're
wrong
a
with that.
very good judge, neophyte or not. It's what our relationship was born of. It's as much as I talk, I actually realized I should probably shut the heck up and listen to what you were saying.
No, I mean, look, this is a show about effectiveness, and the industry, it can get really focused on awards. And I'm all for awards, but I got to a point in my last life where, you pull the Ryan Berman string, and I would actually say I'd rather do advocate winning work than award winning work. It got to a point where we were only focused on that or somewhere, and I get it. Like, it's important for people's careers, and it's like, we don't have a lot of things to celebrate sometimes. So, like, bringing us together. But in your mind, and again, I think this is sort of the last question of the first conversation. How important are awards still in your mind?
Look, this may be controversial. I think they're really important. And I love the way you framed it. And maybe, taking some of the words you said, like community. There's this supposed advertising community, right? But there's not a whole lot of community left anymore. But we're 50 years out from everybody working on Madison Avenue. And I think when we all gather together, whether it's to go on stage and collect the Grand Effie or the Grand Prix at Cannes, it's a celebratory moment for a community that recognizes excellence. And then we all actually go celebrate together as a community. And it's not necessarily about who won, it's about this journey we're on together. So whether we were dentists, insurance salespeople, realtors, whatever, I do believe that industry recognition and industry community go hand in hand. They create a reason for community. I also just think that recognition of achievement in our chosen profession versus our competitors within that community is really important. If you're doing your best work, it should be recognized. It feels good. It motivates you. It motivates your partners. It motivates your colleagues. So do I think there are some that are maybe in our industry, perhaps a little more frivolous than others? Sure, maybe. But even so, the person who won that, the team is never a person. The team that wins any given award, regardless of what the award is, that award was 100 out of 100 times determined by a group of industry peers and frequently industry leaders who said, yeah, that one, that's the one. Let's let everyone know that that one was the best one. Like that matters, and it matters to all of us. So look, do I over-index on Effie? I am the worldwide board chair. That's the fancy thing. But and by the way, I take so seriously that they let a creative professional who joined with the independent seat. So every major holding company gets a seat. Most of the world's leading brands, tech platforms, like it is a crazy high-end room that I step into there. As I remind myself and them, I'm the lowest rent person on that board. I take so seriously that they let a creative professional who spent more than a decade in Hollywood trying to pull brands in it actually be the board chair of the world leader in the standard bearer for marketing effectiveness in over 100 countries. So I think that one matters a lot. By the way, creativity is a big part of Effie, 30% by the numbers. And then Cannes Lions too, because that community aspect is really important there. Everybody goes to one place for a week. It definitely over-indexes on creative, I would suggest, in a good way, although they're bringing effectiveness into it. I love that it's also become a global business conference. I know that too is controversial. Like there's Michael Cassin's Cannes, and then there's the Cannes of everybody giving awards out. And I actually made it my like self-appointed role to like pull those worlds together as much as possible. I think we're making progress there. But yeah, I really think awards matter for all the reasons I just described.
So if you were gonna like take us behind the curtain on you, and I like hearing that you said you kind of went away for a while and did some personal work, right? Who knows if he actually went away, but you get the idea.
I did. Yeah, I did. It's in Marin County, and you can't bring your phone. and it's like six, actually 7 or 8 if you do some after work with zero technology and a group of strangers and some really great professionals.
You might as well be there then, right? And so the universe decides that it's time for you to go, and you opt in on that. If you were going to describe yourself in only 3 words, and I'm hoping it's not a tagline, I should have been more clear, but like word, period, word, period, word, period. What are your 3 words?
Talkative, tireless, tenacious.
Oh, I like the alliteration. It's as if you grew up in the business.
Amen.
All right. Walk me through why you chose those 3.
Well, look, how about all the run-on non sequiturs I've been throwing at you for the last 40 minutes or so? So talkative, I think, speaks for itself, pun intended. Tenacious, one of my long-time creative partners, Vince Engel. I met him he was already a legend when I got to Wyden. I went to his office. I got some great advice from Dan Wyden. Go meet your favorite art directors. Excuse me, you're a writer. We know who your favorite writers are, or you do. Go meet your favorite art directors. Just spend a week. And I walked into Vince Engel's office and kind of never walked out. And he was once describing me when we both went to lead another ad agency years later. And we met with some friction when we first got there because of, where we wanted to take that company. And I had borne the brunt of that. And he said to the whole company, here's the thing about Jae, you can't knock him down. You remember those he described me like this. Remember those blow up clowns with the weight in the bottom? And I think mine was named Bobo, if I recall. And you could punch this blow up clown in the face and it would bounce back and bounce back up. He described me as that. I don't think a lot of people would take that as a compliment. And I took it as like the highest compliment in the world that I do approach everything with a level of tenacity. I take things deeply, deeply personally in the moment because I would never present an idea that I didn't believe was the right thing to do for the company that I'm presenting it to. But rather than kind of be offended by a no to something that's so personal, I get knocked down. I find another way to say it, another way to do it, another way to try to convince them, and I bring it back. So the tenacity is not there in every aspect of my life, not just professional. And then tireless is just, I'm really lucky. I have a lot of energy.
So go, go, go. Hey, this reminds me of 2 very separate thoughts. So one, I've always said of myself, I'm patiently relentless.
I like that.
Right. And I think if you go down into the deep corridors of who I am, the way I grew up, I was never perceived by myself as the smartest person in any room, but I would outwork you. Like I just taught myself, I'm going to have to outwork you. And so I adopted that clown being punched in the face and get back up. They're the Bobo syndrome, as we'll now call it, myself. And I think it's a positive, but also the second is the older I've gotten, the more I think you have to care and not care at the same time. And this one's tricky because to your story of, hey, that low person in the room who had finally had their opportunity, that's not the not care I mean. I deeply care, like you said, about making sure you're saying things intentionally and that they're landing. And I had to learn that lesson over a career. But I also believe now, in a world where we're talking over each other or we're not really listening and taking it in, when you do deeply care about a topic, you have to be okay that you might upset somebody. And it's not trying to be polarizing for the sake of polarization, but it's like, by the way, here's how I landed. I arrived at this thing and giving the why on that as well. But so I find that's the other one for me is that care. So you got to care and don't care at the same time. And I'm curious if that resonates with you at all.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I published in maybe 2015, but I wrote in 2006 on my way. Literally, I was on the plane, wasn't a long flight from San Francisco to LA. And I thought, okay, I'm actually doing this thing at Creative Artists Agency. Like, we're going to go start this division. What do I really believe in professionally? And a lot of the things I wrote were the things that you just said. We share that. So I guess it's not surprising that we have an affinity for each other. But one of them was clients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. To only work with people who I like and respect, to only present ideas that I believe, truly believe, are the right thing for the person, not the company, the person to whom I'm presenting them. And there were a bunch more. So I guess that's a long yes to everything you just said.
Curious where you grew up, and inside that whatever location, growing up, was this creative business even on the table, or were you being pushed in a different direction?
Great question. And I think, for anybody relatively early in their career or their path, maybe hopefully this would be, I hope if nothing else comes of this, a helpful answer. So to answer your question, I grew up a lot of places under strange circumstances, not for this podcast. I was adopted at birth and I'll never know who my parents are. And that's, lawyers, private investigators, I will never know. Doesn't mean there's anything controversial there. I just won't know. But I was adopted by a great couple who decided not to be married about 6 months after that. So as a result, I grew up a lot of places. Elmhurst, Queens, New York, where I went to publicly funded daycare while my single mom worked for American Airlines in the city. 3 generations in a 1-bedroom apartment in Elmhurst, Queens, New York. So it's to this day, Jackson Heights, which is right next to Elmhurst, I think is the most diverse community on planet Earth. There's like over 100 languages spoken. So I got a real sense of the world and a real sense of what it means to not have a lot within the world. Although for a lot of the people who make it to Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, Queens, it's the best their life has ever been. Right. And so I got the whole land of opportunity, community, diversity of experience, of lived experience, that innately. We then moved to a very northeastern, very preppy town in Connecticut because American Airlines moved their headquarters to Hartford, Connecticut. So I suddenly found myself from neighbors on one side speak Russian with English as a second language. Neighbors on the other side speak Spanish with English as a second language. My grandmother speaks 4 languages. To everybody speaks English with a certain accent that I'm not, got a bit of rather. I was like, wait, what does that mean, rather? And so I had to really learn. So I learned that really quickly that, and then without going too far into it, I went to go live with my dad and stepmom, both Silicon Valley engineers. And then eventually I would say my own formative years were Los Angeles once I went to UCLA. So that was I grew up a lot of places. I think that really helped me in terms of having empathy for audiences. And then in terms of the artistic piece, while my family were great consumers and supporters of the arts, this is more the Silicon Valley family. They love the arts. For whatever reason, that never converted to the arts would be a worthy way of making a living. And so, look, I love them and we're on a podcast, but I think they would admit as much now. I was discouraged from pursuing the arts despite being in a band and loving being on stage. And to this day, I go to the theater by myself every time I'm in New York. I see almost every show that's up. Just took my son there. Let's go to this crazy jazz club, be in the basement. It's cool. He's not 21. We'll sneak him in the back door. So I love that. And every time I walk out, I think to myself and sometimes say out loud, I wish I'd had a life on the stage, specifically stage live performance. I just love that, but it wasn't in the cards for me. And I think that I took that with me though. And that if not for that kind of desire that to express myself creatively, not a chance I have the career I've had. So I don't wish, it's not a sliding doors thing. I don't wish for a moment that my life were different. I know I would have loved that. Might not have worked out, by the way. But I will say this: when this career, whenever it's over, is over, good chance you're going to see me in like local repertory theater as, older salesman number 3 in The Music Man. And I'll be the happiest older salesman number 3 in The Music Man you ever saw.
Well, it's a love story, and every love story has tension, right? And so you can see, and it's so funny. Again, I grew up outside of DC, spent my summers in North Carolina. Very different as a Jewish kid seeing stuff at a Christian summer camp. Then went to New York City, right? Very different, a little rougher, a little tougher. Not like like I'm a rugged guy, but like I got to experience New York City, and then spent a summers and out in LA as well in my college years. So that whole seeing different and having that perspective, especially when 50% of the U.S. population lives 50 miles from where they were born, and you wonder why you have empathy. And you talked about your neighbors in Nashville. I'm curious if your kids. So how old are your kids now? And as you sort of look at your journey through their eyes, which is what we do, what are the conversations that don't need to happen that you're hoping they're picking up the lessons?
Oh boy, you're so good at the questions. So I have 2 seniors, senior in high school, senior in college. Daughter's finishing up at Vanderbilt, and my son, the senior in high school. So this is great because it's going to come right back to the run on non sequiturs I just gave you about my own experience. My daughter, super high performance human being, goes to Vanderbilt, top of her class in Los Angeles. She's just a superstar. So the assumption was management consulting, one of the big banks. She went through the whole crazy interview process for internships. And hard for me to say this without tearing up, but came to me maybe a year ago and said, I think I want to do what you do.
Wow.
I just burst into tears. It was like after watching me fly around the world, do day trips to Shanghai, try to get back just in time for your game or your recital or whatever. And like for all the tension that placed into our family, you want to do it too. And so she worked at the production company Smuggler. And like, I would say for those who are like, oh, Nepo baby, I will tell you, Daisy Goodman, the accolades we got back, that she crushed it on her own, having nothing to do. And so I think she'll go do something in production, probably, or definitely at the intersection of brands and entertainment. She's just she's wonderful. And her brother is a performing artist who will, I bet you, spend his life on the stage.
Wow.
And said to me, and has all the support in the world from me, that and from his mom and from everyone, we can and said to me as we were driving to school right before he could drive. So he's almost 18 now. This would have been, so he was like 15 and a half. And he turns to me and said, I'm okay being poor. And I was like, context, please. Like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I want to have a life in music. And if that means that I don't make a lot of money, or I have to do something else in order to try to make ends meet alongside it, that's fine. But I'm okay if that's my fate financially, because I know that I want to spend the rest of my life in music. Now he's a really smart kid, and he's making it his business to understand the business side of entertainment. But he's a true musician. His personality comes out the minute he gets on stage with the guitar in his hand. This like other human who's orders of magnitude broader just comes out through his guitar. It's a really beautiful thing to see.
Jay, what's his name?
His name is Dean Goodman.
All right. So, in the spirit of, I can't explain why I need to do this, and I try to stay in my lane, meaning when you host a podcast, I'm trying to stay out of the way and ask questions. But when you're on a podcast, you're bringing your point of view, or when you're on the stage, you bring your point of view. But I want to say to Dean that when you can surrender a fear because of love, you are doing things the right way. And somehow I think, and I can't explain it, the universe has a really weird way that when you actually make that choice, the money somehow shows up too. but it might take a while. So the fact that he's able to like surrender, like I'm okay being poor, is a serious insight where love wins, and just be Bobo the clown and keep chopping wood in the thing that you love. And I can't imagine that you're not going to live a wonderfully happy and fulfilled life doing what you love.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. If he doesn't listen to this, I will be sure to share that with him. But this is the Courageous podcast. And yeah, I think it was a tremendous act of courage for him to say to his very achievement oriented dad. And he wasn't saying it as a challenge to me, he was saying it as his truth. And look, proud moment for his mom and I to have heard that, to know that he's someone who's that courageous himself and his convictions. And yeah, I would suggest to you, without going into it, he's already had feedback that he's probably going to be just fine as a so but he'd be happy busking, which is really cool, and he sometimes does go do that just for fun. But he'd be really, he teaches kids who wouldn't otherwise have the money to have music education. He teaches those kids, and I think I can tell you when he comes home from teaching those kids, because he's never happier.
So last question for you. Of course, it's a two-parter, and it's almost this. If I already asked the most courageous, this will be the most unfair, because I already know that when you throw yourself into something, you're in it, and it's hard to separate probably personal life from professional life. I'm not trying to project here, but you'll hear where the question's going. If fear and courage are two sides of the same coin, meaning you can't get to the courageous choice without first addressing the fear, where are you afraid? Give me like a place where you're afraid right now. Maybe this is the hard part. In your professional life, it's probably easy, but also give me one in your personal life, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Deep question. Look, honestly, bearing it all, I guess, fear of abandonment, that I'll be alone on this hill. I'm constantly recruiting. I have very few close friends, but constantly recruiting them to whatever I'm kind of doing or thinking. I value my alone time, but I fear existential aloneness. So professionally, it's that this thing that I've dedicated my career to might not matter that much, that I'll be alone on that hill. And then, look, I'm aware of the fact that we're all born and die alone, but I'd like not to be alone at the very end.
Whew. You're not gonna be alone, man. I'm rooting for you. I mean, anytime, I hope we do stuff together too, which I know you know. We're
Yeah.
having small conversations, but like,
We're going to figure it out. I don't doubt that for a second.
yeah, but it's funny. Anytime I do a purpose statement for myself, what comes back is always, I want to be the best friend ever that I can be. And I think somewhere along the way, friend has become like the other four-letter word.
Mm.
And I'm like, wait a minute, how did that in business? Like, wait, that seems off to me. Like, why wouldn't you want to be an ally? And just to your point, like the more leaders I do talk to, and the higher up you get, the more alone it can feel. And so loneliness is a real thing. And you just want to feel like you belong to something that's important, that's meaningful. You're doing it, man. Superconnector Studios. Looking forward to seeing what you make of it. Hopefully, we can find a way to make it something together. And you know how I feel about you coming in on Courageous too, and helping us with specific spots where it makes sense. And I'd love that. Nothing more. Any final thoughts, parting words before we wrap?
It does occur to me, and it is my favorite play, that I basically just pitched you Death of a Salesman. So, yeah, I guess, look, I really appreciate you and what you do. And if there's a final thought there, is that it was, not only courageous for you to do it, but then wear your courage on your brand. And I know that we'll work together, because when I need someone to tell me the truth or help find the truth, I know that I can turn to you. So I really appreciate that you spent this time with me, and I know we're going to spend more time together.
I'm glad everyone's getting to know who you are and the journey that you've been on, man. It's cool to see. Keep going, and I'm sure I'll see you in LA sooner than later. That's my guess.
It's possible.
Thanks,
now
Jay.
come visit me here. It's great. Thank you, Ryan, very much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.